Hi, and welcome to the Healthcare CEO Show, where you'll find actionable insights on healthcare leadership from the best and brightest in the industry. I'm your host, Daniel Fernandez. Let's get a pulse. I have a very special guest today. His name is Paul Hershman. He's a chairman of the board at MD Partners, and I would describe Paul as a bit of a Renaissance man. I would say his current list of titles includes more than anything I've probably ever seen with a guest on our show. It includes founder, CEO, chairman of the board, consultant, investor, author, mentor. There's not much that Paul hasn't done. So I'm very excited to hear him talk. And I feel like it's my duty today to extract as much information from his brain as humanly possible for anybody that is listening to this podcast, because he has so much valuable knowledge to share. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So let's start with a little bit of your background. I mean, it kind of just went over some of your titles, and you've had many successes over the years. But how did you get started?
So I've always been very entrepreneurial. Came from an entrepreneurial family, and really in healthcare, I was trying to sell a product to OBGYNs back in the early '80s, and it was to transfer procedures, to allow them to do a procedure in the office. And they all said, new technology. They all said, hey, I really don't want to buy that, but if somebody would allow me to use that on an as-needed basis, I would take all my patients and somebody ought to do it. And so in 1989, we thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. So we put together the first venture in, bringing technologies to physicians and letting them utilize it. So really it's a matter of just kind of listening to what the market's asking for, and to try to offer goods or services that can potentially, fill the void that you think you're identifying.
Yeah. I mean, you've had some wins over the years. You've had some losses, and I think that everybody can relate to that, especially today. So, going back to 1994, you were running one of the fastest growing companies in the U.S. I think it was ranked 317th overall.
Right.
So that was a company called Medical Alliance.
Medical Alliance, which was the first healthcare venture, and that was the one that was providing new technologies to physicians. Really it was changes are occurring quickly in medicine. A lot of it has to do with treatment options, technologies, drugs, et cetera. In this case, there was a very quick development of new technologies, and physicians were unsure about whether how to use it and was it more effective or better. And so they were slow to adopt those new technologies, and we helped them get over, the adoption curve by making it available to them so that they could perform procedures. And also at that time, if you would think back in the US, there was really a push to migrate procedures. I guess it's still going on, but at the time it was trying to transfer procedures from the hospital to a surgery center, or from an OR to a surgery center. And then we really looked at trying to move procedures from an OR to the office-based surgical setting.
Got it. And then in 96, you took the company public?
That was the same company, Medical Alliance. And we were blessed in the fact that we were able to grow quickly and profitable. And then the marketplace was also, by the marketplace, I mean, from an IPO perspective, we fit what the market was looking for, and we were able to take the company out with an IPO, and led by a top-tier investment banker, and traded on NASDAQ there as well.
Wow. Yeah, and then in 2000 you sold it, and then probably around 2008 we would have dealt with the financial crisis, right?
Correct. Right, and so for me, I'd had great success and then really in 2003, I joined some other individuals. We thought what we saw was a trend for in aesthetics for med spas to be developed. At that time, plastic surgeons and dermatologists were providing most of the aesthetic procedures, and we thought that we saw that there was an opportunity for non-plastic surgeons and dermatologists, as well as plastic surgeons and dermatologists, to provide aesthetic procedures in their office. So that business, MedSurge, was all about bringing in the technologies and selling that to physicians, but really helping them in opening new businesses. The easiest part is if you buy a piece of technology, and once it rolls into your technology, into your practice, you have to know how to use it. But then the business of operating that new venture profitably is really where it's difficult, I think, for physicians.
And then in 2012-ish, you founded Thermi, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you built that company up, and one of the first things I learned about you is that you sold it for roughly $82 million. Is that correct?
That's the neighborhood, yes.
Yeah, that's staggering. So what would you say were some of your biggest takeaways in that process, or some of the greatest learnings that you had over that period of time?
Well, I would tell you, it was the things that I learned were an accumulation of successes and failures up to that point. When we started Thermi, I'd actually just come off the biggest loss of my career.
Okay.
And where I'd been successful in taking companies public, I built a successful company. Unfortunately, we were not able to get a liquidity event, and I was at odds with the partner. And then 2008 hit, and just the whole economic downturn affected us, and we ended up losing everything at that time from a personal perspective. And so when we started in 2012, we didn't have a lot of resources to go forward, and we were looking at raising private equity or venture capital with just an idea, which I had known at that point is impossible to do, primarily from coming to terms on valuation with early stage startups. And so we went about trying to raise capital from people in the marketplace that would help us be successful, and that were basically plastic surgeons, dermatologists, facial plastic surgeons. They were going to be our customers, and they understood the value of the technology that we were introducing. So we thought what we would do is, rather than capitalize the company from more traditional participants, we decided to capitalize the company from those that could be our customers. And it ended up being really one of the best things that we did, because of their involvement and commitment, enthusiasm in being a part of what we were creating.
So today, you now help physician practices with their exit strategies. Is that correct?
Right. So as a result of the execution of Thermi, and not only building a robust company, but having a successful liquidity event, and I've been in the industry now for between 30 and 35 years. And a lot of the people that I deal with are some of them are my age and younger, hopefully for them. And a lot of them said, "How did you do that? How did you have a liquidity event? And what about me? What can I do? I'm building my practice, but what do I do? What advice do you have for me on the things that I could do? Because I don't want to just retire one day and walk away from what I've built. I would like to have someone come in, take it over, buy my building, figure out what I need to do so that I can benefit from my patient base and my brand, my reputation." And that's what really kind of got us interested in working with physicians and MD partners.
Are there some common mistakes you've seen that have been somewhat consistent across the physician base of physicians who are maybe looking for an exit strategy but don't necessarily have a plan in place?
That is the biggest mistake, and that's the biggest mistake I see in all businesses, is if you know that you want a liquidity event. For instance, we had a liquidity event, but it was not by accident. Right. We developed a plan for that, and we worked to that plan every day, because you got to know what your objectives are, what that looks like for you, what you would accept, and prepare your business so that you could find someone that number one, the assets are in place, the things that they would want to buy, or easily discoverable, validated, transferable to them, but just start putting it together so that you could potentially have something that someone would buy from you.
Yeah. We have a prediction here that we're making. We predict that in the wake of COVID-19, there will be a period of growth through acquisitions. Do you agree?
I do agree. From my perspective, what I see are there are a lot of technologies that are introduced to the marketplace. And, and there's a lot of technologies that end up not having great intellectual property or the best FDA approval, but they're still able to compete in the marketplace. And I think that there especially is a place for technologies that are innovative, but also might have patent protection or even a great FDA approval, and companies that already had sales marketing, they're already at the trade shows, they already have a base of customers, all the infrastructure that you would need. And for them to grow, they really need to continue to bring to that operating company new opportunities. And then for the innovative company, they've got to really look at the cost to getting to market, the cost to be at trade shows. And, it's very, very expensive in a lot of the industries where I've operated companies to even be there week in, week out, where you need to be on the podium at the trade shows with your reps, out to dinner, et cetera. So I think that it's going to make more sense now than ever for earlier companies maybe to latch on to someone quicker.
Yeah. 2020 is
my dog.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no worries. Again, this is not recorded, or it's recorded but not live. No worries.
When you have noises like that, it's good to address it.
Okay.
Even if you
Okay. Yeah. No worries there. You've got a puppy over there.
All right, we'll see how she does here now.
Oh, it's okay. No worries. Like I said, this is all, I was just talking to Matt. He slices and dices everything afterwards. So there's no worries at all.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Can you Photoshop me a little bit?
You look great. You look dapper. Nothing to worry about there.
Right.
The next thing I want to talk about is 2020. It's been a challenging year, to say the least. I feel like many of the CEOs we've talked to have had many struggles this year, many challenges. Are there some challenges that you've seen that have been consistent with maybe some of the people that you're working with, and what are some ways they've overcome some of those challenges maybe?
Well, yeah, I do see a lot of challenges, and I think they're working on overcoming those challenges right now because there is so much in flux in our country and in our families and in our industries. But for instance, related to the things that I was primarily involved in, which were aesthetic elective procedures. And a lot of those have come to a stop. And they've come to a stop while the market's changed. A lot of times there's not access for procedures to go to a surgery center. Everything is in turmoil. So you have physicians that would, want to go forward with buying new technologies, bringing the latest out to offer better solutions for patients, but they're frozen right now because they're frozen. When are they coming back? Do we really know when those consumers or patients are coming back? We really don't know. But from that comes the search for all of us in how to capitalize on the changes that are occurring. In fact, a guy that was my COO back in Medical Alliance, a guy from Alabama, told me, and you may want to get this out, but when things got tough, he'd always say, well, Paul, it's your job to make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Yes.
And a guy from Alabama says it better than I do. But it's really right. And we now have a change in turmoil, but it's an executive's job to turn that around and try to find a solution that will allow them to pivot or do what they need to do to try to bring opportunities to their organization and to help their customers.
Still there? Yeah, I agree. My father, when he was raising me, he said, in every economy, up or down, there's opportunity. You just have to be able to see those opportunities. I've also heard from other CEOs that they feel like this is sort of compressed their implementation timeline. Whereas, in the past, they might have had like a 5-year rollout plan. Now they're having to roll it out over the course of 5 months instead. And a lot of that has to do with technology.
Right.
Yeah.
And for instance, and to relate to one of the things that we're doing after being in this industry a long time and having the pleasure of working, with C-level executives, and really, where it really happens is with your sales team, and they're interfacing with the customers. And I've had the pleasure of working with so many great salespeople, and most of them are now out in the marketplace struggling to try to sell the new aesthetic technologies to physicians who are, most of them, in neutral right now, but they've got to feed their families and they've got to keep going. But what we've been able to do now is we're just putting a whole team together. We're bringing a solution in for infection control. And we've been able to secure some UVC lights that you roll in and park in a operating room or in a waiting room or wherever. And in 20 minutes, it'll kill all the COVID, and then also bring in some misting technologies that will kill on the surface, any type of COVID and other types of things we're all now particularly worried about. And we've gone from, looking at the luxury being maybe some cosmetic procedures, where we think that the safety is really the new luxury right now, right? And so we are now pivoting with people to go with to physicians or whoever it might be, because they need to now differentiate themselves in the marketplace to let their customers or patients know it is safe to come back. And if you come to my facility or to my office or my store, when you walk in, you should know that we've taken cutting edge technology and it's as safe as it can possibly be. So we're just searching for, some way to take advantage or to bring in something that is more interesting and more needed at this moment.
Yeah. You've been working with startups, sounds like most of your career. Is that correct?
That's right.
Are there any that excite you about the future? I know you're involved with one that works with sort of holographic imaging and potentially a few others as well.
I really, I think I'm more, as an executive, more on the innovation side, which is where my passion is, rather than the operations side. And I'm working with a breast implant company called Ideal Implant. And by the way, they've got great PMA, FDA approvals with 10-year data on a unique breast implant that there's nothing like it in the marketplace. And, I'm on the board there and do some consulting with them, but I'm of a belief that it's a product that will ultimately be a preferred product by women. I'm excited about that. I'm working, I think holographic imaging is a new way to tell a story to someone that's considering a cosmetic procedure. Maybe they're looking at in a 3D image what they really look like, or maybe they look at a 3D image what they might look like after that. I think that is certainly a wave of the future. Working with a company, Dominion Aesthetic Technologies, and they have a laser with a robotic arm that creates apoptosis, or the destruction of fat. And I think they're going to do really well also. So those are really, I think, the main thing. Oh, and I must mention another company, Organics, which is introducing a new grafting technology for hair transplants. And then they have a laser that's FDA approved for the growth for male and female. But that's it. I think that's my list.
What has 2020 taught you? I've asked everybody this, and it's been interesting to hear what some of our guests have said.
So I think 2020 is, about hanging on and reevaluating what is going to be important in 2021. I think it's about reevaluating our lives personally and figuring out what is really important for us personally, and the importance of family. But I think that, there's going to be some real winners and companies that are losers in the rest of this year and beyond, and no fault of their own. Many of them just, this country is nothing like it was in January of this year. So many different areas of change that, create some, I think, fear and doubt.
What advice would you give to a CEO who may be listening to this podcast right now, who may be struggling with making decisions or pivoting or feeling the burden of having to pivot or make changes very quickly, but they're not necessarily sure of how to go about it?
I would say you probably need to err towards being bold at this moment. And you've probably had a chance now to look at this now for 3 or 4 months. And, many companies also are just dealing with, they've had some PPP relief and employees have been on the payroll and now they're, reaching a point, is it better or worse? So I think that there are decisions that have to be made to make sure that the company will survive and, and go forward. But, hopefully you've got good counsel and you have people around you that don't necessarily agree with you and have a skill set and some experiences that are different than your own, and that you can, lean upon them and have a good discussion amongst yourself, because you probably need to make a decision and move forward with it, into 2020 and 21, which are very different.
Where can our listeners connect with you online?
Well, we have MD Partners. You can look at the website, the MD Partners, www.themdpartners.com. Tell a little bit about what we're trying to do. We're working with physicians that own properties that want to develop a strategy and a plan to find an exit. And, so they could certainly look for us there. I have a great interest in mentoring CEOs and, happy to have those conversations with people that are interested as well. May I come back and say one other thing?
100%. Yep.
Okay. Probably one of the most important things that I walked away with at the end of Thermi in our liquidity event is realizing how much goes into a successful business and a successful exit strategy. And as a guy who had been successful before, but then, went through really a period of time, a number of years where things really didn't work. And I was trying to have, I had the same perspective, a lot of the same ideas, same work ethic, and I was struggling to make things happen. And with Thermi, when we got involved in, with the company, and we began to move forward, we had, again, this huge success. But what I noticed in this venture, different than the 5 years right before that, is that when things happened out of our control, rather than wrecking the company, they would change our course, but we ended up going in another direction that was better. And so I actually began to carry a Bible verse with me about a year into that was relative to what we experienced. And it's Ecclesiastes 9:11, which is, the race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong or bread to the wise, nor riches to men of fortune, but time and chance happen to them all. And that's what I learned. As executives, you got to be the best. You got to do your best. But you know what? Look at what's happening now, right? With the economy, with all around us. You also have to realize that it's not all you. And, you can benefit. And when you are successful, you've had some help.
Yeah, and I think to your earlier point about surrounding yourself with a strong team was important as well, for sure.
Thank you. It is for me.
With that, we're going to close out our show, but I just want to say thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for sharing your information today with us and our listeners, and I genuinely appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for including me in this program. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on the Healthcare CEO Show. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for more insights from the top. Until next time, lead boldly and care deeply. See you on the next episode.